Imagine a tiara crafted by the legendary Fabergé for none other than Empress Maria Feodorovna herself. A masterpiece of sky blue, turquoise and diamonds, born to glitter at grand balls and state receptions. But what if I told you there isn't a single portrait, not one photograph, where the Empress is seen wearing this particular jewel? Why did the boldest and most avant-garde piece in her collection vanish into obscurity? Was it merely a fleeting whim? Or does its creation and disappearance hide a story we are only just beginning to unravel? Today, we will attempt to solve the enigma of Maria Feodorovna's turquoise parure, a masterpiece destined to become a legend, but which instead became a phantom. The late 19th century. The Russian imperial court was a dazzling showcase of power and opulence, where every jewel proclaimed status more eloquently than any words. In the world of high jewelry, old dynasties of master craftsmen reigned, Bolins, Hans, their names synonymous with imperial luxury for decades. Their style was impeccable, traditional, and perhaps a touch predictable. Sapphires, rubies, emeralds, and of course, oceans of pearls and diamonds were the unshakable pillars of jewelry etiquette. But Empress Maria Feodorovna, spouse of Alexander III, was a woman of a different caliber. True, she adored classic jewels and wore them with truly regal grandeur. Yet, a passion for variety, for novelty, and for a style valued above mere cost resided within her character. As a true arbiter of fashion, she found herself constrained by the strictures of centuries-old protocol. She needed something more than just another affirmation of status. She needed a spark. And that spark was brought to court by a man whose name would soon become synonymous not merely with luxury, but with brilliant artistic vision, Carl Fabergé. Unlike the established suppliers, Fabergé was an innovator. He wasn't afraid to experiment, boldly combining materials and seeing high art where others saw only semi-precious stones. He was more than just a jeweler. He was an artist who sensed the spirit of the age and understood the discerning nature of his most important patron. It was from this creative alliance between the innovative jeweler and the monarch eager for fresh ideas that the concept for a jewel destined to defy all conventions was born. The commission, placed in 1890, was revolutionary in its own right. Not sapphires, not emeralds. At the heart of this new masterpiece was to be turquoise, a stone beloved by the common people, yet exceedingly rare in formal imperial parures. This was a daring move, dictated not so much by a desire for economy as by a yearning for originality. Fabergé, who adored working with gemstones and maintained entire lapidary workshops for this purpose, saw a unique opportunity in this commission. An opportunity to prove that the true value of a jewel lay not in its carats, but in the perfection of its design, in the harmony of form and color. Thus began the creation of a parure destined to become one of the most extraordinary treasures of the Romanov dynasty. At first glance, selecting turquoise for an imperial parure might have seemed eccentric, almost audacious. After all, it was a stone more often associated with Eastern bazaars than with the throne rooms of the Winter Palace. But Carl Fabergé wouldn't have been a genius if he had settled for ordinary material. For Maria Feodorovna, he chose not just any turquoise, but its rarest and most precious variety, known as glassy turquoise. This turquoise, comprising no more than a few % of the world's total yield, possesses exceptional density and a glossy, almost porcelain-like sheen. In old black and white photographs from the Fersman catalogue, the cabochons of this turquoise glow so brightly they could be mistaken for pearls. For the parure, which consisted of a diadem and a brooch, Fabergé's jewelers selected more than 50 such stones. Each was polished to a perfect smoothness in the form of a cabochon, a convex, unfaceted dome. This ancient method of cutting allowed for the revelation not of superficial sparkle, but of the full depth and purity of the celestial color, its most delicate shifts and unique patterns. The stones didn't sparkle, they glowed from within, as if holding a fragment of the southern sky. This serene, matte radiance of the turquoise was masterfully accentuated by diamonds. But even here, Fabergé eschewed a standard solution. Instead of dazzling modern cuts, he employed the antique rose cut. Such diamonds don't produce sharp, fiery flashes. Their light is soft and delicate, shimmering like the reflection of a candlelight flame. This was a wholly deliberate choice, immersing the entire jewel in the ambience of bygone eras. The diadem's construction likely adhered to the classical canons of its era, graceful scrolls and garlands woven from diamond ribbons. Yet, instead of the customary pearls or sapphires, at the center of each element rested these celestial cabochons. The combination of turquoise and diamonds, considered almost impossible at the time, created a striking visual effect. It wasn't merely a play of contrasts, but a dialogue between two distinct worlds, the cool aristocracy of diamonds and the warm, living soul of turquoise. Imagine this treasure for a moment. The cool weight of the gold setting in your hands, the smooth, silky surface of the cabochons which feel warm to the touch, and the interplay of light, the deep, calming color of turquoise, which doesn't reflect but absorbs light, and beside it, the soft, mysterious twinkle of hundreds of rose-cut diamonds. This was more than just a jewel. It was a tactile and visual marvel. Ultimately, Fabergé created not an ornament, but a historical illusion. Thanks to his choice of materials and techniques, the parure appeared to be a priceless archaeological artifact, as if it had just been unearthed from the treasury of some ancient Greek queen or Byzantine princess. It wasn't merely a fashionable accessory, but a work of art narrating a fictional history of centuries it never possessed. This was its main, invisible, and most crucial allure. The story of this parure ends where for others it only begins, at the moment of its first public appearance. There is not a single reliable testimony, not one entry in a court journal that precisely indicates when and where Maria Feodorovna first wore her turquoise set. But this very silence speaks more eloquently than any eulogy. The absence of this jewel in official portraits allows us to reconstruct its true purpose and authentic triumph, which was most likely private rather than public. One can only imagine the scene in the Anichkov Palace. Carl Fabergé, with bated breath, opens a shagreen leather case before the Empress. And in the dim light of the boudoir, upon dark velvet, a cold sky in diamond stars flashes with an otherworldly glow. This was not merely the acceptance of an order, it was the triumph of their shared vision, proof that their bold experiment had succeeded. In that moment, the parure ceased to be a collection of stones and metal. It acquired a soul, becoming the embodiment of its owner's taste and independence. Most likely, Maria Feodorovna chose for the debut of this piece not an official state reception where everything adhered to strict protocol, but one of the more intimate, yet no less brilliant, events. Perhaps it was one of the famous balls at the Anichkov Palace or an evening in the Imperial box at the Mariinsky Theatre, a place where sophistication and originality were valued more than a mere display of status. Imagine the effect she created. All around, a sea of diamond rivers, sapphire lakes and ruby fires, the familiar and dazzling luxury of the empire. And against this backdrop, the Empress appears, her diadem crowned with stones that any other Grand Duchess would have considered far too simple. It was a quiet, yet thunderous challenge. The whispers that swept through the hall were undoubtedly a mixture of bewilderment, hushed disapproval, and among the most discerning, pure admiration. That evening, the turquoise parure became more than just the final flourish of an outfit. It was a manifesto. By wearing it, Maria Feodorovna asserted her right to her own style, declaring that true elegance is defined not by price tag, but by impeccable artistic taste. Her triumph lay not in dazzling everyone with cost, but in provoking conversation, debate, and ultimately admiration for the audacity of her choice. The jewel transformed from a mere object into a legend, albeit one known only within the most exclusive circle. And this is where the greatest paradox of this story begins. The golden age for an imperial jewel is a time when it shines at balls, is immortalized in state portraits, and enters history as an indispensable part of its owner's image. But the golden age of the turquoise parure was different. It was quiet, almost invisible to outsiders, and thus even more intriguing. Its peak of glory unfolded not beneath the glow of palace chandeliers, but within the empress's private chambers. Maria Feodorovna possessed one of the world's greatest jewelry collections. Her sapphire and pearl parures, her rivers of diamonds, were what her younger daughter Olga called her imperial armor. These were jewels for a role, for status, for an empire. They were magnificent, imposing, and perfectly suited to her position. But the turquoise parure was different. It wasn't armor, it was for the soul. Most likely this piece was part of her private, unofficial life, centered in her beloved Anichkov Palace. We can assume that Maria Feodorovna wore it not for state receptions, but for family dinners, musical evenings, or gatherings with close friends. In that atmosphere, where she was less an empress and more Minnie, a loving wife and mother, this jewel looked most organic. It didn't shout about power, it whispered of refinement and exquisite taste. This parure was not merely an ornament, but a symbol of her special alliance with Fabergé. By wearing it, she supported her innovative jeweler, demonstrating to her inner circle that genuine art is not always measured by the cost of its stones. It was her personal talisman of good taste, a piece that brought her joy directly, rather than being intended to impress ambassadors and courtiers. Thus, the turquoise parure did indeed become her calling card, but for a very select circle of initiates. It spoke more about its owner than the largest diamonds. It spoke of her courage to transcend tradition, her love for art, and her understanding that style is something far greater than mere luxury. The golden age of this treasure is a story not of public triumphs, but of quiet, personal affection. Of those moments when the Empress, alone with her jewel box, chose not what protocol dictated, but what delighted her heart. And in this secluded, world-hidden radiance lay the true glory of Maria Feodorovna's turquoise parure. The history of this jewel is devoid of bloody dramas and loud scandals, but its mysteries lie on a different plane, in the realm of rumors and conjectures born of its unusual nature. The main shadow cast upon the parure was that of doubt. Was it even worthy of an empress? In conservative court society, where the value of jewels was debated as hotly as political alliances, the appearance of simple turquoise in the imperial collection could not help but provoke whispers. Behind Maria Feodorovna's back, there were surely gossips. Some saw it as a caprice, a fleeting fancy, or even bad taste. Others attributed it to the excessive influence of the fashionable jeweler Fabergé, who, as envious tongues claimed, simply sold the Empress less valuable goods disguised as exclusives. These conversations, of course, did not extend beyond palace drawing rooms, but they created an aura of controversy around the parure, making it a kind of jewelry dissident within the impeccably aristocratic Romanov collection. The most famous legend surrounding this set involves its doppelgänger. The truth is, a remarkably similar turquoise parure belonged to Queen Olga Konstantinovna of Greece, born a Grand Duchess of the Romanov dynasty. For a long time, it was believed to be the very same ornament, either gifted or sold by Empress Maria Feodorovna to her relative. This theory sparked a flurry of speculation. Perhaps the Empress grew disillusioned with her daring choice and decided to part with the parure. Or was the jewel a pawn in some clandestine diplomatic deal between the two royal courts? However, a meticulous examination of photographs and archival records debunked this myth. It became clear that these were two distinct, albeit similar sets. Queen Olga's parure featured a slightly different design and was commissioned by her independently, most likely inspired by the Russian Empress's remarkable jewel. Yet, the very existence of this doppelganger and the confusion surrounding it only deepened the tale's mystique. Even after being unraveled, this myth vividly illustrates how truly extraordinary and unforgettable Fabergé's creation was, so much so that others sought to emulate it and attributed to it a destiny it never possessed. Thus, the turquoise Parure's darker side was not one of crimes and intrigues, but rather its status as an outlier among its more aristocratic peers. Its true mystery lay in the silence of its owner, who never publicly explained her choice, leaving courtiers and descendants an expansive canvas for conjecture. This jewel was a quiet rebellion, and like any rebellion, it was surrounded by a wall of misunderstanding and a swarm of speculation. The end of an era for the turquoise Parure arrived not on the velvet of an auction podium, but amidst the thunder of cannons and the shattering collapse of an empire. The First World War proved to be the harbinger of its demise. In the year 1917, amidst an atmosphere of escalating chaos, a decision was made to evacuate the crown jewels from Petrograd deep into the country, to Moscow. In a feverish haste, lacking detailed inventories, chests brimming with treasures, including Maria Feodorovna's Parure, embarked on their final journey to the cellars of the armory chamber. No one then suspected that this was not a rescue, but a farewell forever. History's iron curtain descended swiftly. Revolution, abdication, exile, and finally, banishment followed. Maria Feodorovna departed Russia, leaving behind not merely a country, but her entire former life, of which her jewels were an inseparable part. This moment marked the definitive rupture. The jewel, crafted as the embodiment of her personal taste, was forever severed from its owner. It ceased to be a symbol of the Empress's style and became an anonymous prisoner in a sealed chest. Long years of oblivion ensued. While outside, the flames of civil war raged and a new alien world was being forged, the turquoise Parure, alongside other Romanov treasures, lay in complete silence and darkness. It froze in time, transforming from a work of art into a silent asset whose fate remained utterly unclear. This was its life in the shadows, not nestled in another owner's jewelry box, but lost in historical limbo, designated as abandoned property of a fallen regime. The atmosphere of this moment was not filled with the sorrow of parting, but with the tragedy of total annihilation. More than just a throne collapsed, an entire civilization crumbled, taking with it its codes, rituals, and aesthetics. The world that cherished stylistic nuances and audacious artistic gestures vanished, and with it, the turquoise Parure was orphaned. Its history as a personal jewel, a cherished object of its owner's love and pride, was irrevocably over. Ahead lay a new, impersonal, and cruel chapter. Its reappearance on the stage was not triumphant, but tragic, and its setting was not a grand ballroom, but the cold table of an expert commission. In the early 1920s, the fledgling Soviet government, desperately in need of foreign currency to rebuild the nation, unsealed the Romanov chests. The cellars of the armory chamber, which had held their silence for years, now filled with the voices of appraisers. And there, from the darkness of oblivion into the harsh glow of an electric lamp, the turquoise Parure re-emerged. This was its second and final birth. But the world it returned to was utterly transformed. It was lifted from its case, not to be admired, but to be weighed. It was examined not by art connoisseurs, but by pragmatists who saw before them only a sum of its components. So many grams of gold, so many carats of old-cut diamonds, so many turquoise stones for which perhaps a buyer could be found. A monstrous re-evaluation had occurred. From a symbol of taste, an artifact embodying the daring union of empress and jeweler, the ornament was reduced to a mere collection of raw materials. Its new interpretation was utterly devoid of poetry. History, soul, artistic intent, all were deemed insignificant. The commission, led by mineralogist Fersman, delivered its verdict. The Parure, created in the year 1890, possessed no significant historical value. This was the apex of its tragedy and, in a sense, the peak of its value in the eyes of the new regime. Its worth lay not in its uniqueness, but in its liquidity. At the very moment the Parure objectively became an invaluable relic of a vanished civilization, it was officially declared insufficiently precious to preserve. The jewel's sole and final appearance on the world stage was its black-and-white photograph in the pages of the USSR Diamond Fund, a catalogue compiled by Fersman for foreign buyers. This was no exhibition booklet, it was a price list. The ghostly, colorless image became its only legacy. Its second birth effectively served as its obituary, capturing its beauty moments before its destruction. So, where is this Parure now? The answer to that question is simple and brutal. Nowhere. This masterpiece has no guardian because the masterpiece itself no longer exists. It does not lie in a state treasury, adorn a museum display, or shine as the jewel of a private collection. Its story ended on an appraiser's table in the 1920s. The fate of most Romanov jewels categorized as second-tier or non-historical was sealed. They were treated as raw materials, and the turquoise Parure was no exception. Most likely, it was ruthlessly disassembled. Rose-cut diamonds were pried from their settings and sold loose on Western markets. The unique cabochons of rare turquoise probably met the same end, assuming a buyer was even found for them. The intricate gold filigree setting, which held all of Fabergé's genius, went into the melting pot, transforming into a featureless ingot. And yet, this treasure does have a guardian, silent, flat, devoid of color, but all the more precious for it. It is that single photograph in Fersman's catalogue. This image is all that remains. It transformed a lost ornament into an immortal artifact. Today, the turquoise Parure is a ghost, a legend frozen on a yellowed page. It is no longer an accessory, but neither is it a museum exhibit. It is a documented void, a stark reminder of how fragile material beauty truly is in the face of historical cataclysms. Speaking of its value today is futile. If this jewel had miraculously survived, its auction price would be astronomical. It would be composed not only of the cost of its stones and metal. Added to that would be the magic of Fabergé's name, its impeccable provenance, the Empress Maria Feodorovna, and most importantly, its unique, tragic history. But because it is lost, its true value lies in the lesson it imparts. Some treasures exist only in our memory and in our stories, becoming all the more precious for it. So, let us return to the question where it all began. Why did the boldest and most avant-garde jewel in Maria Feodorovna's collection never appear in photographs or on portrait canvases? Now we can answer that with full certainty. It wasn't hidden away. It was preserved for a special occasion, which wasn't a grand ball, but a quiet moment of personal joy. Its invisibility was not a sign of neglect, but the highest mark of distinction. It was too personal, too special, to be paraded about as just another symbol of power. The story of the turquoise Parure is not merely a chronicle of a beautiful object's creation and loss. It is a drama about the clash of two worlds, a world of refined taste, where value is defined by artistic vision, and a world of pragmatism, where everything is reduced to the price of raw materials. It was born as a manifesto of style, lived a short life as its owner's quiet delight, and perished as a faceless collection of components. Its journey from an imperial boudoir to a smelting crucible is a metaphor for the demise of an entire era. The main conclusion we can draw, looking at its single ghostly image, is that this jewel was a physical embodiment not so much of wealth as of character. Its celestial hue reflected not the ambitions of an empire, but the personal courage of an empress and the creative audacity of a jeweler. It was not created to blind, but to captivate those capable of understanding. Maria Feodorovna's turquoise Parure proved that true value doesn't always announce itself with the dazzling glitter of diamonds. Sometimes it whispers in the language of a rare gemstone and brilliant design. And though we will never again behold its vibrant glow, its story continues to live on, reminding us that genuine masterpieces are immortal, even when only a black and white shadow of them remains on the page of an old book.